Right, guys, welcome back once again to Rob's Arcade. I'm your host, Mr. Rob French. We got our Jedi friend here and our little droid. Um, just wanted to kind of hang out and take a few minutes to, I don't know, talk about some Star Wars and um, just kind of share some of the thoughts and ideas that I've shared with some of my friends over the last couple of days. We've kind of talked about Star Wars, and I thought it'd be kind of cool just to hang out here in this beautiful setting in some of these games that I have here. Star Wars, Fallen Order here. Really just kind of replaying this and getting back into this title. But I've had a lot of fun uh, playing some of the older titles as I've been gearing up and just getting ready for May the 4th, which was yesterday. I hope you guys got a chance to kick back and watch some Star Wars. I love some of these settings and some of these surroundings here in this game. They're just absolutely gorgeous if you ask me. Um, but yeah, so anyway, I've been playing like even some of the older games and just been having a lot of fun reminiscing about Star Wars and where it was and where it is today. I've mentioned in some of these other videos, which if you haven't seen some of the videos that I've been sharing recently where I've been going back and playing some of these older titles, go back and check them out. They're a lot of fun, very cool. And I talk a little bit about how it took me back to a time like early 2000, I guess, where we had the prequels were coming out. They weren't quite a thing just yet, but they were on their way. And there wasn't anything really as far as storytelling goes. I mean, really outside of some books and some comics, we didn't really have any like Clone Wars animated series or anything like that right away. We did eventually get some Clone Wars animated shows kind of in between some of the prequels, and that was really some of the first storytelling, and I talked about that. But really, just going back and playing some of these titles, it took me back to when really the only way to get new Star Wars content was to go and play some of the games for these next gen consoles. And I'm not actually going to go and engage these creatures, but I just love the fact that these little like dog beast things are just ripping in to these stormtroopers. I think there's maybe like another one maybe scattered over there somewhere maybe. That's just great. Really cool. So, I mean, so anyway, today, we have Disney Plus, and really like every so many months we get a brand new television series exploring a new character, and Obi-Wan gets his own thing, and Ahsoka gets her own show. And we did not have that, you know, 20 years ago or so. So really, like I said, the only way to get these new stories and these new information pieces was to go and play some of the games that I looked at over the course of these last few days. And then there's even a few others. Clone Wars was another big one. I just love all of this stuff right here. It's just such a beautiful title right here. Especially like if you're a Star Wars fan. Get a chance to kind of check some of this out and explore all this right here. Super cool. So yeah, I just remember, like I said, you would get like a video
Another
game
one?
or well, really, like I said, you just get like a video game, and it would maybe give you a sneak peek into some of the events that happen just before episode 2,
Oh,
or
okay.
um,
Did you find
give you
something,
some
BD1?
pieces into. Let's see, we got a new poncho. Let's go ahead and change our poncho up here. Is that? Oh no, let's go ahead and do it like that one. That's actually really nice. Also, like this aspect of this game where you can really customize all the pieces here. But yeah, so you would get like a title like Clone Wars or something like that, Naboo Starfighter, and it would kind of give you these cutscenes, which again was very new. In fact, when I first started playing Star Wars games in the late '90s, mid '90s, it was like on GameCube and maybe 64, and it was more about playing the characters within the movies. And then they started giving you the option of playing the characters within the movies, but playing these like side missions and these stories that you know. Kind of filled in the gaps, and now you have, like I said, a dozen or so different shows and series on Disney Plus that fill in the blanks, add new content, and all kind of stuff. This is just absolutely gorgeous right here. I remember being very fortunate that I still played video games, even in my early 20s, and having friends that I worked with and stuff at different jobs, and talking about Star Wars and what they liked about it and different things. And you know, I would ask them if they had played this game or whatever, like, or knowing that they didn't, and kind of feeling like I had one up on them, like, oh man, like, well, if you haven't played this game, then I don't know if you really know all about like Star Wars. And it was a lot of that, like at that, I think The Matrix had a really cool movie tie-in, or it's like, people were like, oh yeah, I've seen The Matrix and I've seen this and that. And it's kind of like, well, have you seen the Animatrix, and have you played the video game? And if you haven't, then you haven't really seen it. And it was very much the same thing with Star Wars, where it's like, yeah, you've seen Star Wars, but have you played the games, and have you watched the Clone Wars and got all the pieces in between?
Nice landing, Grease.
Me? Oh, yeah. Not a problem. It's easy for a skilled pilot like myself, especially when flying a ship like this. This baby was a steal. Well, I mean, I didn't steal it. I bought it. Well, I sort of, almost. I mean, I took out a small loan. Big loan, actually. No, it's fine. Look, we're all fine. Don't worry about it. Don't you have Jedi stuff to do? Get to it, kid.
It was a great incentive too to like beat different games. There was, again, like I mentioned, the Clone Wars game, Bounty Hunter games for the GameCube and stuff, and I just remember like actually wanting to go through and play the entire game to get those cutscenes and to get those pieces, and like, oh man, it was like, oh, I can watch another Star Wars movie if I beat this game. So it was a really great incentive for beating those games. But it was a very different time too with like Star Wars. Again, like there's so many shows and so many things coming out nowadays. Back then, we actually had a magazine. I think it was called like Star Wars Insider or something like that, that came out monthly in between episodes like 1, 2, and 3. Um, just because it was like we couldn't get enough Star Wars. Um, So they had to put a magazine out to give us even more. This is some of my favorite stuff about this game, where as a fan of the franchise, you can come in here and just sit close to your TV and feel like you're in the cockpit of a ship on Star Wars. This is just absolutely. Actually, I'm going to turn my light down just a little bit. What's interesting is, like, I've kind of made this comment before too, where it's like, some of these games that I was playing back in early 2000, they don't really date very well. They're very, the graphics are pretty bad. A lot of the characters' faces look like they're oil slicks and very greasy, but it was amazing. Like, it was nothing on this level. Like, I can't imagine if I was like playing a game that was this clear and this beautiful and this well defined. It's just so cool. But yeah, there was not a whole lot of shows and things like that. So we had like magazines we would read, and it's just anything to get our fingertips on anything that looked and felt and even mildly tasted um, like Star Wars. This is so cool. All of this aesthetic here. Let's hear what she has to say.
I can see you two have been through a lot. It's not easy.
No, it's not. But I think of those who believed in me at one point. If I give up on myself, then I give up on them. I'm sure you have a few of those.
Prof, friend on Bracca. He sacrificed himself so I could live.
He believed in you. A lot of people depend on you, even if they don't
This
know
is my
it yet.
camera move.
Keep going, Cal. For Prof. For everyone.
You got it. Got the little kitchen area here. Very cool. But yeah, it's interesting, like I said, being able to even play Star Wars games that were around in the 80s and 90s, and you know um, where they've traveled to. I think like Battlefront was one of the main reasons why I even wanted to get a PlayStation 4 and finally get to that next gen console after waiting so many years. I think up until that point, like the newest console was like a Wii or something like that. And I was like, no, I finally want to jump into that next gen. And it was because of Battlefront and being able to live out these stories and live in this world and check all these things out. And um, it's just really come a really, really long way. And so now we get to kind of exist and live in these cool little fantasy worlds. But like I said, it was going back and playing some of these earlier games that took place in like the 2000s during the prequels, where I really felt like a cool appreciation for like what Star Wars was and how it's you know gotten to where we are now. Where, like I said, we do have the Mandalorian, and we have Obi-Wan Kenobi and Ahsoka and the Skeleton Crew and Alkalite and so many different television shows, and they're just going to keep coming. We got a new season of Andor that's out now, and it's really a cool piece. And it might seem like well, yeah, of course, but to be living in a time, like I said, 20 years ago, where none of this was a thing and none of this was available, it's really really cool to be able to get content and stories of Star Wars and comic books. I think maybe Dark Horse uh, back in 2000s had some comics, and of course Marvel had a you know uh, run with them back during the original uh, the run. But now it's like IDW Publishing, Marvel, uh, even Dark Horse all have comic titles out, and again, you had the prequels, you had the original trilogy, and there wasn't a whole lot of stories and content in between all of that. And going back, I said, playing like Jedi Starfighter and uh, not necessarily Pod Racer, but it did take me back to that time of like Bounty Hunter and different uh, video games where you were playing through and getting to know who these assassins were and where Jango Fett came from and how Count Dooku and all of these things kind of like you know played a factor into each other. It'd be really cool if I could jump down there, check all that out down there. It's cool. You can customize your lightsaber and all of that. I'm wondering when the next trilogy is going to take place. You know it's coming. You know they're not going to stop making movies as well. They're doing really great with everything they've been doing on Disney Plus. So they've got to be working on a movie out there as well. For I think they talk about the Mandalorian release is going to be a film. Um, and I was kind of saying earlier I could kind of see that being a new trilogy, but I figured there's got to be why stop with episode? Why not go to episode 12? Why not see what happens? Um, after Rey takes out the Emperor once and for all, and all that. So, but yeah, it was just really fun going back. I said and playing some of these titles, playing some of these games, and reliving that idea of um, what we used to have and not taking for granted so much. Not taking for granted so much the idea of having all that we have now. I actually hear some kids saying like, "Well, this show is stupid, this show sucks, and this is dumb." But it's like, well, at least we have this stuff. Like I said, there was a time when, say what you will about Alkalite, I like it, and I enjoy it. Um, but just to have that, and just to be able to watch stuff like that, it's just a really cool. Oh shit! Trip down the stairs. Way to go, Jedi. Uh, it's just really cool to be a part of all that and see where it's like to see where it's come from and um, like I said I don't think I ever thought there would be like so much content. Growing up we had the Ewoks. That was about as uh, much extra content as we got from Lucasfilm and that whole franchise to spin off Ewok movies. Uh, it's funny, everybody talks about. I'm gonna, talk about this a little bit more, maybe later in another video or something. But um, everybody talks about how like, okay, some of this stuff is bad, some of this stuff is good, and this sucks, and blah 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 blah. But like I said, we only had like Ewoks. That was about the best that we ever got. Um, and um, as far as like other creators telling stories, and it wasn't until the um, little shorts, the little serials of Clone Wars on Cartoon Network, we started to get other creators and telling these Star Wars stories. And I know some fans are upset that like Lucas gave up Star Wars and has been letting other people like write some of these movies and kind of take creative control over his property. But I've always felt like the best Star Wars stories have been told through the voice and through the lens of somebody else. Like he only directed the um, original film, and even his prequels or the sequels to those were handled um, by other directors. And then he stepped back in and did the prequels, and we saw how like god awful, uh, those were. So George Lucas was never, I feel like, the best storyteller in the Star Wars um, storytelling family. And I do remember being like in my 20s playing some of these games, and even then, like before the Clone Wars animated series, like playing these games and going like, God, like why are these stories and these characters and the development and the arcs way better than episode 1 or episode 2? Like there was, I think, like it was either Bounty Hunter or Clone Wars, but I remember watching the cutscenes to those movies and seeing some of the Easter eggs and thinking like this is a far better storyline than some of the stuff I've seen in any of the uh, movies that were actually directed by George Lucas, himself. I think Empire Strikes Back is probably one of the best films out of the series. Um, and then, of course, Return of the Jedi is just a beautiful, I think, example of that idea of the multi-story happening, where you have so many things going on, where there's a battle happening here, and it's a roller coaster ride, and a battle happening up in space, and that's another roller coaster ride, and then another thing happening over here, another fight happening over here, and that's another emotional roller coaster ride. Instead of just having one climactic piece, um, and it's done so well. Like it's handled so well, it's handled so beautifully. But again, it's not directed by George Lucas. They're directed by other directors. So it shows you even early on that it's when the fans of the franchise start to make games and animated shows and all of that, that we really start to get the stories that we as fans also want to, we want to see. And so I don't know. It was just been really a lot of fun going back. I would love for you guys to jump into the comment section and share some stories or quotes that you love from Star Wars if you have any. If you haven't watched any of the movies and you want to know like where to start, hop in. I can give you a really cool um, rundown of kind of like even where to start with like watching the movies and stuff. But it's just I don't know. It's a really cool um, franchise, and it's really interesting how it did start as just like one crazy wonky film back in the 70s, and now we have like whole days and whole celebrations where we sit back and we talk about it and watch dozens and dozens of movies and shows and kind of celebrate this Star Wars culture. It's pretty cool. But like I said, it's just been a lot of fun. I kind of wanted to share some of those pieces of Star Wars and some of the things that like kind of came up while I said I've been playing some of these older games over the last few weeks, and how it's just like wow, it's crazy to think like this was what we had. This was it. We had you know um, some movies like 3 prequels. Um, you know that we've been wanting more Star Wars. I think fans have been dying, and then they heard like oh, there's going to be 3 more movies, and it wasn't quite what I think fans were hoping it would live up to be. But like I said, we started getting video games and um, a little bit of like Clone War, little shorts here and there on Cartoon Network, and it started to become that like little pinhole light. Like, okay, there's kind of hope out there for some really good stories and some really good content. And you know, now even like Fortnite and other games are coming out. We get to play this really cool title here as Cal and explore a whole new world that ties into the world of like Andor and Rogue One and even I guess Clone Wars and Episode 3 and the Order 66 and how that all connects. So I don't know. It's been a lot of fun. I'm gonna do another little piece on this tomorrow. It's kind of like a revenge of the 6th. I do want to wish my dad a happy birthday, Cinco de Mayo. Happy Cinco de Mayo out there, everybody. I guess that poncho, yeah, show it off. I guess that poncho is pretty accurate. Cinco de Mayo. Cinco de Mayo in space. All right, guys. Well, thanks for hanging out. Just wanted to chat, like I said, about some Star Wars. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. Until next time, make sure you take care of yourself, take care of each other. Don't spend that quarter anywhere else, and may the Force be with you.